This video is going to just give some examples and walk around the monitoring framework a little bit, understand that tool for project management. So let's take a look at our sample. So here we have an example of a monitoring and evaluation framework. Remember that it is monitoring during the program and evaluating at specific points, maybe in the middle, maybe a couple of times, but definitely also at the end, evaluating for progress against these indicators. So your indicators, you will remember you put in your log frame. This again is emphasizing the goal, the outcomes, and the outputs, and you may have named them and then added an indicator in your log frame. We sometimes already have the definition in the log frame, but not always. And the key here is the definition. A lot of people get confused between the indicator description and the definition. Indicator, here we can see the first one, percentage of grade 6 primary students continuing on to high school. The definition really answers the question, how is it calculated? So I can think of many ways that we would calculate this. They are specifically saying it is the number of students who start the first day of grade 7 divided by the total number of grade 6 students in the previous year multiplied by 100. So you have your grade 6 completion rate as your baseline, and the numerator in this case is the grade 7 start rate. So just as a quick note, if we had 20 kids in grade 6 graduates and we had 12 of them start grade 7, you would obviously then divide and multiply, as it says, by 100, and you would see that you had 60%. This is your target. I can quickly throw a wrench in the works with this particular example because you would then have to verify that all of these 12 were part of this 20, right? You don't have any new transfer kids coming into high school that weren't in the elementary school system that you're measuring. So being careful of those things. These are the kind of questions you can ask. How could I mess up these numbers? And then you need to fix them and refine that in your definition. The definition makes it clear so that if you hand this framework to somebody else, a monitoring specialist who comes in, and they know to measure you this way, and you know to do the work in such a way that you can be measured this way. What does that mean? Well, we'll skip the next two columns and we'll go to the data source. The data source says, how will it be measured? So how will it be measured has to be a way that would measure this specific definition. Now they have their enrollment records. That's great. So what that means for you as the project manager or a project management staff is that you need to retain these enrollment records. You need to make sure that you have them. It would be terrible to get to the end of the project, get your list of kids who signed up for grade 7, and you have no idea how many kids graduated from grade 6. You would need both of those pieces of information, preferably with their names, so you could cross-reference to make sure they are the same kids. That's your data source. Sometimes you will want, or a donor will request, a secondary data source. Sometimes these are just an additional piece of evidence. So for example, you may, for a construction of latrines, you might give the GPS coordinates, and you might give the materials list that was used, so showing those materials were purchased, show that the labor cost was put in there by paying somebody, and you have the GPS coordinates to verify exactly where it is, and you may present that to the community as a signed agreement saying the community has received from your organization these latrines. So you have a couple of different sources sometimes to cross-reference, because I could tell you I built a latrine in the middle of this place, and unless it's visible from Google Earth, there's very little likelihood that you'll be able to find it unless I have this alternate documentation. So that's kind of what we're doing. Now, why do we need to do that? Those data sources are for audit purposes, tax purposes, but also for accountability to the donors and the beneficiaries. All the stakeholders need to be able to see that the work that's committed to has been done. Okay, so once we identify what source we have for the data, we'll also have to think about how often will it be measured. And this, of course, has to be relevant, right? If you're doing enrollment records, you probably only need to measure them once a year or maybe once a semester if that's the system you're on. If you were doing attendance records, you would probably need to check that on a daily or weekly basis. So that would be a different frequency. But so that is key, because if you think it's not that much work, but you find out that it's an activity that you have to check on a daily basis, that might be 30 minutes of work every day for 22 days a month. That adds up 15 hours a month, all of a sudden is a portion of a salary. And that's taking up time that you hadn't necessarily planned for. So making sure you are very clear about the frequency, so that you get enough information and that you also have a plan for capturing that information. And then it's very important to identify who's responsible. The responsible person is not the person in charge, it's the person who will handle that data. Notice the program manager will do this, but when we get down to this outcome, we're doing reading proficiency tests, teachers will be doing that. Of course, the teachers will be doing the proficiency test. You're not expecting your program manager or your school director to actually administer the tests, to have their hands on the papers. The teachers will do that. This next one is, how does that information go up from the responsible person to everyone else who needs it? And so the teachers are not going to give you every copy of every test, but they do a 6-month teacher report in which they are now going to have to put the results of the reading proficiency test. If the reports don't show those results, you will not be capturing all of that data up. So these are often key artifacts within the project, what we put in reporting here. These are the key artifacts. These also are artifacts, but they may not be as tangible. These ones are going to be, all of the ones on the reporting column will be in the hands of the project manager, to be able to write project final reports, to share with any monitoring or third-party evaluation. Now, as you have done this, if you've created this for everyone, just going back quickly, I think the baseline and target are pretty obvious. If we already know a baseline that we want to see change against, we have to put that. If we don't know, but we are going to measure change, we're going to have to capture it. So that means an extra activity of capturing the baseline. And you might put here your average score. If you don't know the average score of these tests here, you might say that you're going to do a reading proficiency test at the beginning of the project and then every 6 months. And that would be in your frequency, so that you make sure you capture your baseline, and then you're measuring against your target. Now here, we have this every 6 months, this test. We know that at the start of the project, scores were 47. When we get to a 6-month report, project manager's job, or those in charge of monitoring, are going to look and see, what is our average score? Is it still 47? Has it gone down? Or is it on a reasonable trend towards 57? This is the way that we know whether our project is working and whether we need to invest more resources, make some changes, how we're going to move from where our target is to, or from where our baseline is to where our target should be. Once you have all of this laid out, this will now have to just double back into your schedule, right? Because unless you've captured those already in the work breakdown, you may not have remembered that in the process of doing monitoring, you're going to have to conduct a baseline test. You are going to have to do a collection of attendance record at the end of every camp. Oh, over here, that's a milestone, is that we're going to write an enrollment report every year. The teachers are going to write a report every 6 months. After every camp, there's going to be a report. So these are deliverables that need to be included in the work breakdown, because the work breakdown needs to be 100% of the project. If you look, you will notice these two First are exactly your log frame. If you've updated your log frame to reflect any changes in the process of project design, you can just use those first two and add more columns because everything in the log frame needs to be here. Not everything in the work breakdown structure should be here because you don't monitor everything in your work breakdown structure. You only monitor the results you're intending to get to the end of. If, as you're doing this monitoring, you find that your camp review reports are not being handed in, or your total number of students present has not gone to the satisfactory target, then you have the opportunity as a project manager to jump into the work. Let's see which pieces of work should have been capturing this data or making this change. Where was the failure? And then we can go and break down that. But this is an overarching monitoring of the outputs that we intend to report on, tied back, of course, to your project charter, because that's the agreement that we have, the contract that we have to deliver this project. That is the end of this video, and I hope it has been helpful to you. Of course, any questions, jump right in and ask.